Guys, I think it's time. We need to talk about Otega Oweh.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to talk about Otega Oweh. I've got some thoughts to share with you about what he could be this season. Also on today's episode, who's going to lead Kentucky in scoring? Will it be Oweh again, or will it be another player in Kentucky's backcourt? And then to wrap up the show, apparently, surprise to me, and it's probably a surprise to you as well, Kentucky's got a quarterback battle going on after bringing in seventh-year transfer Zach Calzada. I do not understand it. Well, I get it, but at the same time, I don't. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also love it if you subscribed there as well. We are trying to get to 20,000 subscribers before the start of the college basketball season. I think we can get there, and it's going to be because of you. So thank you so much for those of you who are subbing. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. We need to talk about Otega Oweh because we haven't talked about him hardly at all this offseason. It's been new addition here, transfer portal addition here, Braden Hawthorne at the last minute seemingly from the recruiting rankings. It's not been about the star of the show from a season ago. Oweh broke out during summer practices, and I actually think it might have been past summer practices last year when he really started to blossom into what ended up being Kentucky's primary option scoring down the stretch. And heading into this year, it's kind of just been ever since he decided that he would not stay in the NBA draft, that he would be coming back for another season with UK. It's kind of just been like, okay, he's here, and we haven't really had to give much thought as to what he is with this team. Now, I've talked about during his process through the NBA draft earlier in May, I talked about how he could be this, that, and the other with the pieces that are going to surround him that Mark Pope has brought in through the portal and all that. But I want to focus on him individually. I don't want to look at just necessarily the big picture and that kind of be it. I want to talk about Otega, his skill set, and what he brings to the table this upcoming season. Because, and this is not necessarily a hot take. Maybe you disagree with this. You can let me know in the comments below. At Locked On UK is where you can find me on Twitter. I think Otega Oweh is going to win SEC Player of the Year. The numbers, I think, are in his favor. The state of this conference, I think, is in his favor. The state of the Wildcats, I know we just said we're not necessarily going to lean into, okay, what's the guard rotation going to look like outside of him? We're going to talk about that actually later on in the show. But there's so much to kind of build this SEC Player of the Year, at least potentially. There's stuff here to build that resume, right? You have the scoring ability first and foremost here. 16.2 points per game, broke out as a junior here after 2 seasons at Oklahoma. He did it on very similar efficiency from 2 seasons ago, I should say, with more volume. He became a much better free throw shooter. He averaged almost 5 rebounds per game, almost 2 assists per game, 1.5 steals per contest. He was a very, very, very good player by the numbers. And whenever you watched him when Kentucky needed him most, Oweh showed up. He showed up in those 2 games against Oklahoma. He showed up against Troy in the NCAA tournament. It was almost unstoppable at times, it felt like, with the way that he was able to get downhill and finish through contact at the rim. He was incredible for Kentucky in a way that I don't necessarily know if we appreciate enough, because as we talked about, I think it might have been on yesterday's episode, about the lack of offensive versatility a season ago. Despite that, we still had things like Oweh where he could go downhill and make a play with the ball in his hands, again, at various key moments late in the season. You have the clutch factor. You have the scoring. You have the hype moments. You have the aura. You've got everything here from a season ago to make the case for SEC Player of the Year. But it's also the offseason improvement that I think gives me some excitement here about Otega. I think that he is going to be an improved shooter. To what degree, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be marginally. He shot 35.5% from deep a season ago. I think he's going to get back up to where he was during his sophomore season in Oklahoma, shooting 37.7% from deep. The release is quicker. It's a little bit more fluid. I think that with what Kentucky is going to have on offense, he is going to get more three-point shots, I will say, or he's going to take more. I think it's partially because of what the offense is going to be. I think it's partially because of what he's trying to add to his game. So we've got the slashing, the scoring, the shooting, the clutch factor. And then what Mark Pope said just a few days ago about Oweh really intrigued me. He talked about how Oweh can end up being one of the best defenders in the country and about how he's one of the most versatile players in the nation when it comes to guarding 1 through 3, maybe even down to a small ball 4 if you want to get crazy with it. Last season, Oweh finished the year with a 105.9 defensive rating. That's not good. But the 2 years before that, 95.2 and 98.4 during his sophomore and freshman years with the Sooners. He has the ability to be defensively strong. And I think we did see that at times a season ago. You are going to see a better defensive product on the floor from Kentucky this year, but it's going to be because of guys like Oweh stepping up and building on what they had a season ago, kind of getting back to where they were during his sophomore season at Oklahoma. So again, to go down the list, slashing, scoring, shooting, hype moments, aura, defense. You have a very well-rounded player that should contend for SEC Player of the Year, but then you've also got some of the statistics. Just because players left this conference does not mean that new players that walk in either through the portal or through the recruiting rankings cannot shine. I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that just because there's a changing of the guard does not mean some of the guys that are still around are going to immediately be number 1, 2, and 3, and et cetera, in different statistical categories. However, I will say, Oweh was 7th in the SEC in points a season ago. The only player that returns with more points is Josh Hubbard, who had 642 as opposed to Oweh's 584. Oweh finished 5th in the SEC in field goal percentage. This, according to Sports Reference, not according to me, he finished 5th in the SEC in field goal percentage. It is minimum 400 field goal attempts. That's their parameter, not mine. That's their parameter, not mine. He was 5th in the SEC in field goal percentage a season ago. He is the top returner in the conference there. He finished 11th in player efficiency rating at 22 flat. There are 3 players coming back that had a higher PER. Keyshawn Murphy, who transferred from Mississippi State to Auburn, Devin McLaughlin, and then Alex Condon, who finished 6th, 8th, and 10th, respectively. Oweh finished 17th in win shares at 4.1. Only 2 players return with a higher win share value, and both of them from Florida, Thomas Howe and Alex Condon. I'm not telling you that he's going to finish first in the SEC in points. He's going to finish first in the SEC in field goal percentage, first in the SEC in PER, first in the SEC in win shares. But he's only battling, in terms of conference experience, so many guys. He's only battling a handful of guys. And again, there are going to be players that come in through the portal that go crazy, that go stupid. No duh. But Oweh is going to be right there amongst the best of the best in some of the biggest statistical categories. And I wouldn't be shocked if what Mark Pope's saying is true, if he also ends up being top 10, top 8, top 5 in defensive win shares, in defensive rating, and something along those lines, right? This is one of the more well-rounded players in this league. Just because he doesn't get it done in as flashy of a way as some other guys doesn't mean that he should have any sort of credit taken away from him. This is your SEC Player of the Year. I'm going to go ahead and call it now so that when it happens, we can all sit there and look back and say, hey, we as a fan base, not just me, we were right. We should be talking about this more. This is the reason why Kentucky is a top 10, top 5 team, because of Otega Oweh. That is the reason. Will he lead Kentucky in scoring again? I would say yes, but there are some candidates that could possibly overtake him. Let's talk about those guys here in just a second. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football is not far behind. Whether you've got your eye on a big name quarterback or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. They have flex options, which are a total game changer. I absolutely love using Prize Picks. I've used them for a few seasons now. It's super simple. You can get a lineup in before your coffee finishes brewing. You can use this not just for football, but for baseball, for basketball. I've actually used it more than anything for baseball, just because I need something to be able to enjoy Braves baseball more, I should say. And Prize Picks absolutely helps me do that. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you could win cash and win up to 2,000 times your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, like me, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice that literally everything in my life works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, my aura, just like Otega Oweh. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always the easiest thing, and that's why I've been loving using Drip Drop. I've told you guys a number of times here on the show already, I love getting out, going on runs, going on walks, and I need my water bottle with me. And it doesn't need to be just water. You got to have electrolytes. You got to have some energy. You got to have some stimulant, and Drip Drop is perfect. The flavors are incredible. My go-to flavor is grape, and it's a game changer. Game changer. This is no joke. This is a product that I use every single day. And right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off their first order. All you got to do is head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Again, that's the code LOCKEDONCollege over at dripdrop.com for 20% off. Stock up now because the heat is hitting hard. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on when you're watching, episode of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you've not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Thank you so much to everybody who commented on yesterday's episode. Some really kind words there. Somebody who didn't understand what the word clickbait means, which, hey, you know what? It happens to the best of us. I try and be as straightforward here on the show. I like to get excited whenever it's time to get excited. I like to be serious when it's time to get serious. I like to be upset whenever it's time to get upset. I'm not trying to lure you in and lie about something. I'm trying to tell you this is what's going on. We'll read the reporting and let's react to it. That's kind of what we do here on the show. We bring you stats, we bring you thoughts, we bring you info. And I guess it's up to you to determine whether or not that's sensationalist or not to say that Jaylen Low, hey, our head coach is saying he's taken a near 15, 16% jump in three-point percentage. That's pretty freaking awesome, in my opinion. But, it's clickbait to some, not clickbait to others. All I know is that I really appreciate you, whether you watch and you enjoy the show, whether you watch and you've got questions, it doesn't matter. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's really all that matters at the end of the day, is that we can have discourse here about Kentucky basketball, the best college basketball program in the world. And they're led by star Otega Oweh. Now, we talked about Otega Oweh, why I believe he's going to win SEC Player of the Year. I think he's going to be the most well-rounded player in this league. I think he's going to be able to back this up statistically. I think he has the hype moments and the aura. I say that jokingly. I've started to say that more unironically recently, and it's become a problem. Am I 5 years old? Maybe at some point you're probably going to, if Tay Kenny somehow magically commits to Kentucky, you're going to see me doing 6-7 all over the place for forever. We're not going to get into that today. But will Otega Oweh lead Kentucky in scoring again? That's the question of the day. There are 3 candidates, in my opinion, that I think could overtake him in points per game. I just want to go ahead and reiterate what I said a minute ago. No, I don't think that Kentucky is going to have somebody else lead in PPG. I think that it is going to be him. With that said, some of you may look at the news. Mark Pope saying, Jaylen Low shooting 42% from 3. The kid was averaging 16 plus at Pittsburgh a season ago, hey, maybe he on higher efficiency just outscores Oweh, not necessarily because he's getting more volume. Maybe it's similar volume, but he's knocking down shots at a higher clip from three, and he's more ball dominant. Who knows? Maybe you look at Jaylen Low as a potential candidate here. I think that he is the only legitimate option. I've got three guys here, but he's the only legitimate option to overtake Oweh in scoring. Knock on wood. I hate to even say this. I should not even say it. The only reason that Kentucky would have another player lead in points per game outside of Otega or Jaland is because of some catastrophic injury. Again, knock on wood. I really hope that that does not happen, that we see a clean, healthy year for the love of all things blue and white. Can we just see a year where Kentucky doesn't get freaking injured at any point during the year, where a star or multiple players go down? Do you realize I was watching the Gonzaga game a few days ago, like just rewatching it for funsies, and I realized, like, hang on, I forgot Lamont Butler did not play in that game. We beat Gonzaga without our best defender. And on top of that, Kirk Carissa goes down with about 8 minutes to go. Jackson Robinson was running point guard. We didn't have a backup point guard. We had to go to our third option, a small forward, and he was running point, and he did it to perfection. Insane that there were so many games last season where Kentucky did not have not just their first option at a position, but their second option at a position. Travis Perry should not have played hardly at all at any point last year, but he had to. He had to because of the situation that Kentucky was in health-wise. And there were moments where he played well. He shot the ball, and it went in. And there were moments where I wanted to scream because of the fact that he could not play defense consistently. I can say that now that he's gone. You know, I wish him the best at Ole Miss. I think a lot of people in the state of Kentucky do. Kentucky was not in a good situation a season ago as far as health, and I would love it, tie this back to where I was going because that was a little bit of a mini rant. I would love it if Otega stayed healthy, Jaland stays healthy, everyone stays healthy through the course of the season so that we can actually see what this team is capable of. Jaland is the first option, in my opinion. Only legitimate one. The second option, and this would only happen either if injury or if he just becomes a star for out of nowhere off the bench, and that is Jasper Johnson. He is my second candidate to possibly somehow lead this team in scoring. We've heard about it. We've heard it from Pope. We've seen it ourselves. We saw it at OTE. Jasper Johnson is a scorer. That's what he is brought in to do. Put the ball in the freaking hoop. And he can do that. He can absolutely do that. Will he get the opportunity to have enough volume to do that this season? I don't think so. But there is a very high ceiling with this prospect, in my opinion. Jaland, Jasper, and then your third option, screw it. Let's go Cam Williams. I think that Cam Williams, there's a chance he could lead this team in scoring. Why could Cam Williams lead this team in scoring? Because he shot the ball at 42% as a 6'8" wing/4 at Tulane a season ago. Not a lot of people can just do that out of the gate their freshman season at 6'8", while also shooting, mind you, 63% inside the arc. So you're getting efficiency across the board. If you give him more volume in a place like Kentucky with Mark Pope leading the charge, Cam could explode scoring the basketball. And now he's got the touch of Steph Curry. So, I mean, really, the sky's the limit here, of course, for Cam. Yeah, so those are the three, in my opinion. Jaland, Cam, Jasper. And I laid this out in my notes. I didn't really have anything like a direction for this. I wanted to just kind of like write down and give my ideas just like what points per game totals could be for everybody. I think that Jaland could be 13 plus points. I think that Oweh could be 14 plus points. Aberdeen could be 9 plus. Jasper could be 6 plus. Mo Diabate could be 7 plus. Colin Chandler could be 5 plus. Hawthorne could be 2 plus. Noah could be 2+, Cam could be 7+, Yelovich could be 5+, Quaintance could be 9+, Garrison could be 4+, Marino could be 2+. That all adds up to 85. And Kentucky was scoring 84.4 points per game a season ago. Maybe they take a little bit of a dip here in points per game just as a team. Maybe they average somewhere between 79 to 85 or something like that. Maybe they're 83, 82. I don't know. But what I will say is that Kentucky was operating with Trent Noah, Travis Perry, and Colin Chandler, who had hardly played at the end of the season. Like they were playing like huge minutes, and Kentucky was still dropping 80+ a game. If you can do it with freshmen who were being thrown into the fire, I think you can do it with this squad. With two of those guys, by the way, back and possibly primed to take not necessarily massive leaps in terms of role, but maybe massive leaps in terms of impact on the game whenever they get in. So that's my thought there. Who will lead Kentucky in scoring? It's Oweh. You could look at Jaland. You could look at Jasper. You could look at Cam. You could probably look at Jaden Quaintance too, in case he goes ballistic. I don't know. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. We've got one more thing we need to talk about here. Apparently, Kentucky's got a quarterback battle. I don't get this. Doesn't give me any confidence in the offense at all. We'll wrap the show up here in just a second. Before we do it, though, tell you guys about our friends over at Open Phone. If you're running a business, every single missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you needed a service. If the person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You probably moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your business. Do you juggle two phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Well, Open Phone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. It's no more who's handling this. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off their first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. Again, that's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. openphone.com/lockedoncollege. All right, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Going to pause here, actually, before we go on a little bit of a rant for water. Excuse me. Sometimes, do you guys, like, anytime you take a sip of water like that, like a child in the middle of doing something important, does like the Fortnite what is it called? Potion effect, like, or sound, whenever, does that play in the back of your mind, like poing? This has been such a weird episode. All right, Kentucky's got a quarterback battle. Why? They brought in a 7th-year transfer in Zach Calzada, and apparently, according to reports, 4-star quarterback Cutter Boley is gaining on Zach Calzada in the battle for the starting quarterback spot. Now, I've said it a few times about just like my confusion with this. Why is this happening? And it's not a question of, wait, why is he being pushed? Cutter Boley, coming out of high school, was a pretty good player, right? Top 25 quarterback nationally, one of the better players in the state of Kentucky, 4-star kid. Kid's huge. He's got a great arm. He looked really good in limited action a season ago, specifically against Texas. But my question here is, if Cutter was good enough to push and possibly start for you as a 6'5", 200-ish pound sophomore, then why on earth did you go get a 7th-year transfer? Why'd you do that? If the goal is to find consistent quarterback play, and you know that Cutter Boley is capable of being a multi-year starter in this league, and he's almost ready now, if not ready, depending on how the next couple of weeks of camp go, why did you bring in a 7th-year quarter? Split Zone Duo, who is just a phenomenal media outlet for all things college football. I would highly encourage you guys to go check out their show. they or Alex Kirshner complains on that show quite a bit about journeyman quarterbacks stealing the opportunities of younger players. It's killing quarterback development. And I think that you could argue that quarterback development just as a whole in this sport is not necessarily dying or dead, but it's definitely being pushed. It's definitely being strained. I would not go as far as to say that it's dying, but there's something going on there. Players like Zach Calzada, and this is not a knock on Calzada specifically, but players like Zach Calzada, when they transfer into situations like this, almost always are they killing the development of a younger quarterback to some degree. And maybe I shouldn't say killing. They are stagnating, or they are slowing down the development, I should say, of younger QBs. Usually, though, the younger players are not ready to be thrown into the fire. They're not ready to start. So you bring the seventh-year guy in to kind of give yourself an extra year, 9 months, 10 months to get the guy that you really want in going. It's a stopgap, right? Why would you do that if you have a guy ready to play? Why would you do it? On top of this, Cutter Boley's already been in the system for a year. He knows this offense. He knows how to work it. And I'm not sitting here saying that Cutter Boley's some world beater during scrimmages, but based on what reports are saying, he's playing pretty freaking good. And it's not necessarily, I don't think, just based on what I've heard, it's not because Calzada is played bad. It's just because Cutter's played that good, which, again, begs the question, why did you spend money on this? Why did you do it? Here's the direct quote. This is from Kentucky Sports Radio. This is from our offensive coordinator, Bush, saying, Cutter is a guy who's a redshirt freshman that we all anticipates the future of this program. When that happens, I don't know. But Zach has been very steady and very good through camp, as has Cutter. But I feel like if one was leaning one way or the other, Zach was having some really good practice and separating all of a sudden. Cutter comes out last Saturday, has a remarkable scrimmage, looks as comfortable as he's looked since he's been here, really putting it all together. We saw flashes in games and practices with his ability in his arm, but putting it all together and really having that comfort level and command of the offense takes time. He's getting very comfortable in making big games. Actually, excuse me, I think that was actually Mark Stoops that made that quote. I can appreciate bringing in an older guy to provide experience. I can get down with that, right? If you have a guy that's heading into his second year in the system, you don't need to spend the money on a seventh-year transfer. And this is this is not a knock on Zach specifically. Zach, I think, is going to end up starting, and I think he's going to end up being good to serviceable to good. I'm okay with Zach Calzada being here and playing. I'm not okay with the context surrounding it, knowing now that Cutter has that ceiling in year two. I don't know. I think that you could make the argument, and I'm not saying, again, this is not where I'm at exactly, but I think that you could make the argument that you'd rather just try and stick it out in a year like this with Cutter and let him roll through a year and take the lumps where they are and make strides where he can, and then head into year three, make some improvements surrounding him, and go get it then. I don't know. I don't know. You could make the argument that you would have rather had the more experience from him this year, but it's also you've got Ponitowski coming in next year, which is like, I don't know. Do you want Cutter to transfer and then you have to do this all over again? I don't know. I don't get it. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. Follow me on Twitter at Locked On, Lance_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And God bless. And go Cats.